Thank you to Ubisoft for providing me with the review copy to Assassin's Creed Shadows. To speak of Assassin's Creed Shadows is to embark upon a discourse of artistic intent, mechanical convolution, and the perennial struggle between innovation and stagnation. A simulacrum of feudal Japan rendered with painstaking precision, yet forever bound by the encumbrances of its own design lineage. The very title beckons forth visions of flickering lanterns and the hushed whispers of shinobi in the night, a chiaroscuro of stealth and spectacle wrapped in the gilded aesthetic of franchise ambition. But herein lies the paradox. Does this latest iteration serve as a masterstroke in the annals of interactive storytelling, or does it merely tread the well-worn path of its predecessors, obscured by the very shadows it seeks to illuminate? Yeah, so I played Assassin's Creed Shadows for about 50 hours. Here's what I think. So first of all, let's look at the performance, and well, the game runs well on maxed out graphics with frame generation on, and without it, even on an RTX 4090 and AMD 7950 X3D, it struggles to stay above 70 FPS at 1440p. However, visually the game is stunning. The world designers and artists have absolutely outdone themselves here. They deserve a raise. Bug-wise, my experience has been surprisingly smooth across 50 hours. One boat bugging out, one crash, that's about it, but your mileage may vary, obviously. Now, the story and pacing. I'm very happy to say that we don't have to deal with modern-day AC nonsense. The last story wasn't very interesting, and this way, the pacing flows much better. Now, character-wise, I would say that Naoe is definitely the clear focus here. The first 10 to 15 hours are all about her before you even get to play as Yasuke. Naoe, however, is a strong character with a clear motivation for being an assassin. Yasuke, though, feels kind of shoehorned in at first. He does grow on you, and his dynamic with Naoe is decent, but it feels like this was supposed to be her story. Generally, Yasuke feels out of place in the game structure. He makes more sense later, but early on, he's just awkwardly there. Now, you can switch between playing as either Yasuke or Naoe pretty much whenever you want in the game, and it's pretty seamless, but loading screens are everywhere. Now let's move on to world design, and well, the world is massive and way too bloated. It's a huge open world with not enough meaningful content to justify its size, just like some of the previous Assassin's Creed games. You'll spend a lot of time trekking through empty landscapes, occasionally stumbling on a question mark or a dynamic encounter that isn't all that dynamic.
Are you all right?
I am now.
Is there anything you can tell me about this place?
Now, exploration is fun at first. Digging through old tombs and finding treasures is engaging, until it isn't. What I'm trying to say here is that most side content isn't very interesting. Assassin's Creed Shadows still has that signature Ubisoft gameplay loop. You unlock a tower, you flood your map with icons, rinse and repeat. The historical setting, though, is pretty well done. There's loads of temples, shrines, and solid cultural references. As always, it seems like Ubisoft did their homework here. That said, I'm obviously not Japanese, so I can't really speak for how authentic or respectful the game actually is. I kinda wish that Naoe had more customization, like in Valhalla, where Eivor could be shaped into either a stealthy assassin or a brute. However, this time around, Ubisoft decided to split these archetypes into two different characters, and I'm not really sure if I like it. Now, saying that, Yasuke is the I don't feel like sneaking character. He can just stroll into a castle and wreck everything, which is kind of cool, but Yasuke sucks at exploration. He doesn't have a grappling hook like Naoe, so climbing is an absolute pain in the ass. At least the devs have had fun with his weight, because if you jump off a high point into a haystack, Yasuke will bounce off of said haystack like a rock, and it's pretty hilarious.
Too many haystacks around here anyway.
Now, how about the stealth gameplay? Well, stealth as Naoe feels fantastic. It's easily some of the best stealth gameplay in the franchise, which makes sense because she's literally a ninja. Stealth as Yasuke, though, is pretty bad. He's clearly designed as a big brute meant to charge in on everything. Now, there are tons of assassination targets. You get a big flowchart of people to hunt down, and that is mostly what you will be doing throughout most of the game. Now, some assassinations are big side quests, while other involve minor factions that plague the countryside, and killing targets is very much worth it because it unlocks weapons, XP, and perks, etc. Now, when it comes to combat, the combat is noticeably harder than previous games because enemies hit hard, especially if you're Naoe, who just folds like a wet towel if you aren't careful. Yasuke, on the other hand, he tanks literally everything, even unblockable attacks. Enemy variety is pretty standard. You'll fight soldiers, samurai, ronin, and big brutes. That's about it. Now, progression and RPG mechanics, because this is a pretty big one in recent Assassin's Creed games. So, how does it feel? Well, progression feels solid at first, throughout the first 20 to 25 hours. But after that, you hit a wall. Because after 25 hours, I had pretty much unlocked most interesting skills. And after that, the progression just turns into a gear level increase. It's all about the numbers after that point. As we all know, Assassin's Creed wants to be RPG light, but the progression just isn't terribly rewarding. Essentially, what AC Shadows does is that it front loads a lot of the progression, and after a certain point it just feels like the game becomes a chore, which again isn't really new to anyone who played some of the previous entries. Now, Naoe and Yasuke have separate weapon pools, which sounds cool at first, but in practice, it just forces you to play as one or the other, which might be a problem for people who don't necessarily like playing as either Naoe or Yasuke, because they're so very different in how they play. Yasuke is a big brute, and he tanks everything. Naoe stealths around, assassinates, yada yada. You know the deal. Now, I gotta mention controls and responsiveness here, and they're mostly fine, mostly. Sometimes contextual mechanics just don't work, like Naoe randomly diving into water when I'm trying to climb a damn wall. Button inputs occasionally don't register. Maybe it's a local issue, but I haven't had this problem with any other game so far, at least this year. For side content and other activities, well, side quests are mostly tied to assassinations. Some obviously require gathering info about said assassination targets, and some of them are pretty involved and interesting, some of them are not, and there are smaller activities to do, but nothing groundbreaking really. So my final thoughts for Assassin's Creed Shadows is that it's a pretty focused game, which is a plus, because it's all about being an assassin or a samurai in 16th century Japan. The world is gorgeous, the environments are amazing, the environmental team and the world designers really put their entire backs into it, and that should be applauded. But speaking of the world, the scope is still an issue. Like I mentioned with Valhalla, like the problems I had with Odyssey and Origins, the world just feels too big for the content that fills it. Then again, they have improved a little bit on the type of content you can do, but it's not by much. So at the end of the day, I would say that Assassin's Creed Shadows is a pretty good game, but it doesn't break free of Ubisoft's gameplay formula, which for some of you is gonna be amazing. Maybe you love that type of gameplay. But if you're not a fan of how Ubisoft has been making their Assassin's Creed since Origins, you're probably not gonna love this one. Unless you're a big weeb, of course. Also, here's a tip for anyone who wants to feel more immersed into the game when you're playing. Switch over to Japanese, because I felt like it really changed how I perceived the game when I was playing using Japanese as the voice language. Naoe's Japanese voice actress is especially good.
タヌキといえばタヌキの絵かもな。絵よりもお前の方がタヌキにじゃ。
家畜も殺され、次はわしかもしれん。
ならばここで見張っておく。野党が出たら止めてやろう。
But that's going to be it for today. Thank you again to Ubisoft for providing me with a review copy. Let me know those comments down below as always. Have a great day, Mr. Olton, signing off.